Welcome to Better Business Results. My name is John Witt, and I'm your host. We work with business owners, executives, entrepreneurs, and sales teams to improve their businesses in 30 minutes or less. I'm a small business owner, a published author, and a recognized leader with Focal Point International Business Coaching, where we have over 180 coaches on all 7 continents. Albert Einstein is quoted as saying that compound interest is the most powerful formula in the universe. Improving your business 0.1% each day can generate as much as a 24% improvement in less than 1 year. You can engage and harness this formula for your business by creating 3 action items in just 30 minutes each week. Let's get started. Well, today's guest is Chris Bissonnette with Massachusetts Mutual Financial Services. Chris, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
So, Chris, we always ask our guests to share a little bit about how did you get involved and how did you get to where you are today and what you're doing today?
Okay, I'll try and go through it pretty quick. I started in the business back in '94. I was recruited out of Arizona State University by a company called Fortis Investors, which most people probably haven't heard of. But Fortis Investors at the time was the 13th largest company in the world, and they were expanding into the United States, almost like Bank of America in Europe. And started there when I was 23, selling mutual funds, variable annuities, and variable life. And after 38 months, they promoted me to branch manager and gave me my own office in San Diego. So that was a dream come true coming from the Arizona area. And I moved to San Diego, opened up an office there, and subsequently, a year later, became a regional manager. Also got an office in Atlanta, which was very exciting. Being able to be 28 years old, young regional manager overseeing these 2 operations. Met my wife here in Orange County back in 2000. And after 18 months, I agreed to move up to Orange County, and I took a position in the building next door, 4 Park Plaza, which was AXA Advisors, where I was a divisional vice president, and I worked there for a couple of years. Subsequently, was recruited to MassMutual Financial Group in 2 years later to be their director of sales development. I did that for 9 years. Thought I was retiring at Mass. Then I got a knock on the door to go open up an office for Guardian. So I opened up an office for Guardian here in Orange County. Did that for 2 years. And then Mass came knocking back saying, we want you back. And we're in process right now of opening a new office in Irvine and to help oversee their office in La Jolla.
So a lot of growth, a lot of opportunity. You must be doing something right.
Yeah, a lot of growth. I've always been on the management side of things, and I'm a systems guy. I've just always enjoyed management and the philosophy of management. I was a top producer when I first started in the business, which is kind of almost a prerequisite to coach other advisors, if you will. But I do feel very fortunate to be able to grow up in Scottsdale and now live in Newport Beach and work in beautiful Orange County, so I feel very lucky.
And so you've shifted from being a sort of producer, a top producer, and I know you certainly still have some accounts and stuff that you service, because I don't know if those ever go away, but becoming more of a coach or a mentor
Yes.
today,
Yes.
And helping other people become more successful.
Yes.
Right? And so tell me, who are you coaching and mentoring today?
Well, my role with the current MassMutual office here in Orange County and La Jolla is to mentor really the managers. Currently, we have 8 managers between the 2 locations, so I'm kind of the manager of the managers, if you will. I also consult and work with the recruiters, the trainers, just basically everybody in the organization. And a big part of that is because I spent 9 years at MassMutual, and most of the guys in Orange County are new. So I'm able to bring in the systems and kind of help merge Orange County and La Jolla together.
So let's talk about systems in a minute, but before we do that, your internal customers, right, the managers and the producers too, to some degree.
Yes.
What are the types of challenges that they're currently experiencing?
Well, it's interesting you bring that up. The challenge they're experiencing, and it's kind of a big one, is the office in Orange County was with John Hancock. And they became a MassMutual office about 8 months ago. Well, when you bring an entire agency over and you merge with another company, there's a lot of differences and changes. because the main office is in San Diego, it's kind of disjointed. So the main challenge is learning and understanding and implementing the MassMutual systems into the Orange County office.
At the same time as trying to grow your business and grow your practice.
Yes, at the same
that doesn't
time.
ever go away.
Yeah, at the same time, continuing to, bring in revenue and see clients. Now you've got this whole new system. Now, what's good is the fact that the MassMutual systems were way better than what they had before. These guys are really impressed with what they have, the marketing materials, the size of the company, the products they offer. MassMutual is, some people say, one of the top companies in the industry. And not to say their previous company wasn't, but the feedback's been, wow, this is impressive.
Apologize for that. So how are you solving some of their challenges some of the challenges you've described? This is part of what you're doing.
Yeah, so number one, for me, coming in, and there's probably 70 people between the two locations, the number one thing I had to do was come in and build some relationships. I can't come in and just, as I've described to people, I feel like I just want to pick the rug up and snap it and all the dust pops off. But if I'm too aggressive, it won't be well received. So I have to build relationships with people and show them that by using these systems and by following some of these other areas and marketing endeavors, etc., it's going to allow them to be more effective and efficient in their role, which in turn will allow them to be bring in more revenue, make more money, and be more successful.
Well, and you were telling me about something called PAMS and
Yes.
how they weren't using it and now they're using it, and
Yes.
you've implemented this at a previous, something similar to this at a previous, and so what kind of results do they get out of adopting this type of a system that you're familiar with?
Yeah, so it's called the Producer Activity Management System. So anybody who's ever been in sales, you have to track your numbers. And what this allows you to do is you're able to input your activity, and then it pulls in your production from the company, and it pulls in all your pending business as well. So it's a one-page snapshot on how you're doing, where you're at, and kind of where you're going. And they just weren't familiar with it. So I had to introduce it to them, which they were like, wow, this is pretty awesome. But the challenge will be its implementation, because again, someone has to go in once a week, they have to put in their numbers, and it doesn't take too long, 5 minutes, but some people don't want to put in their numbers. That's just been my experience.
And I understand, and some people are going to be like that, but what are the kind of benefits? Why would I want to do, if I was the guy, right, what kind of benefits would I get? I said, listen, I'll do what you tell me, Chris, but what's in it for me?
Yeah, good question. Well, basically what I say to them is, in sports, when you play golf, for example, why do you keep score?
You're trying to get better, trying to keep track of your numbers and your metrics.
And so that's usually the answer. And I show them that by using this system will allow them to improve their activity, which is going to make them happier in their position because they're more effective.
So what kind of growth have you seen in their activity and their results? At the end of the day, they're doing more business, right?
They're doing more business with less stress and usually less work. And what I've seen people brand new the business, never sold a financial product in their life, to several years later, they are at a 80 to 100% set to kept appointments. They're kept ratios, almost all the people. They're doing business with almost every person. They're working exclusively on referrals. They just have a very, very enviable, fine-tuned business. And it's really because we're able to each week analyze, or for some people every 2 weeks, analyze their numbers and see where they're doing well in and where they need improvement in.
Right. So I mean that's essentially what you're able to do, is get them to grow their business 70-80%. I mean that's pretty astounding.
Yes, and some people it can even be a couple 100%. You go from 2 pieces of business a week to 6 pieces with the same amount of appointments. But part of it too is as people get more experience in this industry, their confidence level goes up. They're seen as more credible. They're dealing with better clients. So
yeah,
it's a combination.
It's a combination, but this is what you're bringing to the table.
Yes, this is what I'm bringing to the table, and it's been really, for me, it's been exciting because it's really the perfect role for me. I'm a systems guy. I kind of almost wrote the type of position that I wanted to do with the firm, and they needed that position.
So at the end of the day, one of the challenges you have, right? You're new. This is 2 months. You're 2 months into this deal, right? A bunch of new people, a bunch of new stuff, and we mentioned the fact that you're building relationships, and besides, there's only 24 hours in a day, so you can only do so many, right? That might be where you have to. That's your biggest hurdle at this point.
Yes, I think so. I think people will be received on the systems, but there's just always, the new sheriff's in town, and you're going to have people that are going to form allies, and they're going to fight you a little bit, and it's just the way people are, especially when it says, hey, here's what we're going to start doing now. Whenever you tell someone to do something, they always want to just do the opposite, or at least some people want to challenge you. So I have to really just focus on, well, here's the benefit to doing it first, and then just hopefully I have a decent relationship with the person.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about behavioral change. Really, you're saying, listen, we want to change from point A to point B. You want to, this is the way you used to do it, and this is the way that I want you to do it, right? And let's talk about why people do change, because the reality is that change isn't easy, right? And most people find it are resistant to change, right?
Yes.
So I'm going to share with you a little formula. It's called Gleicher's formula for behavioral change. David Gleicher was a clinical psychologist in the 60s, right? And he set about to say, listen, why is it that some people change and some people don't change? Why does some things happen? Why don't some other things? And what he said is, first off, he says that the reasons why people might change, right? And if you look at this formula here, on the right-hand side is an R, and the R stands for resistance, right? And the bottom line is that people are resistant to change. And based on their resistance to change, we have to understand what is it that might overcome that particular resistance. And it's just like, nature, right? Nature doesn't change. Water goes downhill, it goes around the rock, it doesn't go over the rock. People, on the other hand, have a chance to do something different, right? They could decide. So what are those deciding factors? So the first one that talk about is dissatisfaction. If you're not happy with where you're at today, you might be willing to make a change, right? Now that's not enough. You need actually all three factors on the left-hand side of this formula to be successful, right? You have to know where you're going, right? You have to have a vision, right? So if something hurts today, you're just the pain going away might be the vision, right? But maybe you don't have a great deal of pain today, but you really want to achieve something else. You want some more than that, right? But just because we have some dissatisfaction or some vision, that's not enough. I need to know how to do it, and the F stands for first steps, right? So if we take all three of these things together, they all have a factor and a value, right? If we have those and they're big enough, right, then we can overcome resistance, right? And this is the model for overcoming resistance to change. Now note that the D, the V, and the F, right, are all sitting on the left hand, and they all have a multiplication symbol there, right? So what happens if any one of those is equal to 0?
It's a problem.
You can't do it. No, you can't overcome the resistance. And so what I tell people is, when you're building relationships, or we're trying to figure out what's going on, and the idea is to figure out what the D is and what the V is. What are they unhappy about? What is it that they would like to accomplish? The F, the first steps, that's the plan, right? That's where you come into play. You help them. You put together the plan that allows them to get from wherever their current state is, whatever level of dissatisfaction that is, to their vision. And what happens is, you're not selling anything at that point. You're just helping them get where they want to go, right? It becomes a much more successful, solution-oriented stage. Now, this is the win-win. This is the classic win-win scenario. But I like this formula because it's simple and it's easy and we can remember it.
I like simple.
I like simple. And in any sales model, it's the same thing. In sales, we say, listen, don't buy this product, buy this product. To buy my product. Or don't do nothing, buy my product. But in management, it's the same thing, right? It's like, don't do it that way, do it this way. It's a behavioral change, right? We're just not trading dollars for products. We're trading, ideas for performance. So understanding this particular model and building the relationship you do, right? How could you apply this model to your relationship building activities? What would you do? How could you, understanding that you're looking for these D's and these V's, how could you put your glasses on? Fair enough. what are some of the action steps that you might be able to take? Because that's one of our goals here is to develop 3 action items. What are some of the action items you could take based on understanding this to improve and grow relationships faster?
Well, one, if I can share kind of the vision of the organization, like, hey, here's the end spot, and that way we're kind of on the same page. At least we know where we're going. And then I think the real key in group development, people go through what's called storming, is we have to really identify is, like you said, what are they dissatisfied about? What's the issue? And let's get it out on the table and figure it out and come to an agreement and then move on, because until you do that, you're always going to be stuck in storming, where people are just upset and they're not focused so much on business, but they're focused more on bitching about you and issues. And that's really the challenge that I've seen in my 20 years in this business in developing large groups, is getting people through the forming, storming, norming, performing.
Yeah. I forget. There is a term for that. I don't recall what it is.
Yeah. So that's the kind of one of the issues that we have as managers and as leaders of organizations.
So how are you going to identify the dissatisfaction, those points? I mean,
trust me, it's a tough one. That's the hard part of it's having those crucial conversations. It's kind of a tough thing for people to do. A lot of people avoid conflict, or some people are too aggressive and bring it. So you have to be able to do that eloquently. And basically, I would just sit with the person and just say, what do you like so far, and what don't you like? One thing I've always done, and this has been helped me in my career, John, is, people always say, how's it going? And, good. And you always, so I ask people, what's not going well? That's what I want to know. Tell me what's not going well, because no one asked them that. I want to know what's not going well, because if you don't find that out early on, it blows up on you later. Oh, I thought everything was fine. And then you find out, no, they're pissed about this, and this.
So we have to ask questions. Really,
we have to ask questions
is the key.
And make them feel comfortable enough where they can say how they really feel, because I think most people don't know how to say that.
So what is it that you can do that helps them feel comfortable?
I think it's just in the way you kind of say things and say, hey, we're on the same team here, and we've got the same goal, and I want to help you. So tell me what's going well. Tell me what's improvable is how I phrase it. And sometimes there I can see what the issues are.
Well, and then you talked about identifying the company vision, and that's certainly well and good. But what about their personal vision?
Yes, exactly. That's a very good point. Where do they see tell me about your practice in 3 years or 5 years.
Yeah, what are your goals?
Yeah, and then how can I help you get there? As your consultant is how I like to phrase it. Some people, I'm a coach, but more experienced people, consultant. What can I do to? And a lot of times they don't even know. They're like, I don't know. And I said, well,
but then you bring the plan.
Yeah, here's what I think. Here's the areas I can improve on for you. And the other thing that's kind of helped me out too is the fact that I can go back to, hey, I've hired people in this industry with no experience, with several companies, and they've become top producers. So I have the history of it does work. It's not like I'm coming in saying, hey, I don't know if I can do this. I can say, this person's in this business, this person, now again, they're with other companies, but they're very successful, and I hired them.
Yeah, well, and it's this is one of the greatest tools, right? You say maybe you haven't done it, but other people have, and if we could just follow the direction or the path that they took, the chances of us being successful grow dramatically. And so then you've got a list of people that you're building relationships with, and some that you've had a chance to talk with, and some maybe you haven't, and some maybe you want to spend a little bit more time with. Do you sit then and say, listen, look, I need to start with these folks first, right? Prioritize that list. And then,
yes, well, basically what I have to start with is, I started with kind of obviously my boss, the general agents. Then I just went down to San Diego to meet the managers. Just, how's it going, guys? Just real nonchalant. Then the recruiters, and the trainers, and the staff. And I'm kind of an aggressive guy, so I've just remembered to just be as nice as possible. Because I have the solutions, and again, I have to make sure that I roll them out where they're going to be well received. Because it's very easy for someone to say, I don't like that. Well, you don't like it either? Oh, great. Well, so that's my big thing right now.
So we look at Gleicher's formula and we sit there and say, listen, hey, can I keep track of making sure I'm asking the D's and the B's, the questions. What are those questions? How should I ask those questions? Can we build a plan that says this is my process for building a relationship with each and every one of the people that I want to put together?
Yeah, this is great. I mean, something you brought up, which I thought was really good, was, where's your vision? Tell me about where you see your practice in 3 years. People love to talk about themselves, and either they have a vision, good, or they don't, and it's like, well, hey, that's why I'm here, because we need to work together.
In a sales scenario, if you're meeting with a potential client or a prospect, you have an agenda. You know what it is that you want to be able to go through and find out if you can help this particular client. You can have the same agenda when you're talking to a manager or a potential sales associate or producer or something like that. So you could build something of that sort.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So understanding this model, what are the things that you're going to do to add to your portfolio to make your relationship building more successful and occur faster?
I think the big thing on that is the vision. I think sometimes, I know I've done it, I think people they skip over the vision and the mission statement part, which is probably the most important. And they just go to, hey, nice to meet you, great, tell me a little about yourself, and then here's what I'm going to do for you. Versus, let's hear about your practice. Where do you see it in a few years, and what about 10 years down the road? And I think by doing that, really gets the person to open up and talk, and they're going to connect with you better.
Do you envision actually a little cheat sheet or putting something on your phone to make sure you cover each one of those?
I have a management folder.
Various different tools
with 20 years of stuff in it. It's funny you bring that up. Last night we used Box, and I created a management folder on Box and put about 15 management pieces in there, and I shared it, or I invited all the managers to be able to use it. So we'll see how that's received. But I've just been doing this, 20 years. I'm a management major in college. I have it all. I just have to remember to use it and to just be
but you
nice
can still learn things, like with Gleicher's formula. You can say, hey, look, I can still improve. I can still get this thing done.
I can always improve. I learn stuff every day. I've learned a lot from you just working with you. But I would say the biggest thing I pick up from this is, remember, what's the vision? What's the long term? Don't get caught up in the day-to-day minutia. It's, what are we here for?
Yeah, what are we trying to get accomplished?
Yeah, and if you ask that, where do you see your practice in 5 years? That's a powerful question.
Absolutely. Excuse me. Well, Chris, I really appreciate you joining us today. Thanks for your time. And tell me a little bit about your experience today. What did this being on the set and doing this stuff mean to you?
Well, I think it's great. Obviously, I like you. I know you're very accomplished as a business coach. I like Brian Tracy and all his philosophies, as we've discussed. I'm a big Brian Tracy fan for 20 years. But for me, the biggest thing I get out of it is I'm just able to kind of fine-tune my management stuff, if you will. I always pick up on things. I'm big into coaching. I always want to improve. So, like I said, I picked up, just by talking to you about what I'm doing and what I'm doing, working with people, it helps me to clearly see it, and I always get good ideas from it. But like I said, the big thing today is, let's start with the long term. Start with the end in mind, I guess you could call it.
Start with the end in
right?
mind. That's Stephen Covey's comment from the 7 Habits. It's a big key. So, well, Chris, thanks again. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
My pleasure.
And we'll see you all next week. If you'd like to be a guest on our show, contact BusinessWhitt at www.businesswhitt.com. Filmed in studio at John Witt Enterprises, Advanced Coaching and Marketing Solutions, 2 Park Plaza, number 450, Irvine, California, 92614.